Hi guys, this is Shelly with the Gray Wren Sewing and Crafts on Etsy and Facebook. If you are like me, you have lots of scraps around your house, and I just happen to have leather scraps and pressed flowers. So if you want to learn how to make these creative gifts for Mother's Day, Valentine's Day, birthday gifts, follow along. I promise you won't be disappointed. In a previous video, I showed you how I made these pressed flowers in the microwave using fire bricks. It's a really easy project, and believe it or not, it only took 4 minutes on defrost to make these beautiful pressed flowers. My creative juices started flowing, and I thought, how can I use these pressed flowers with scrap leather to make beautiful projects for Mother's Day, birthday gifts, and Valentine's Day? So follow along and I'll share my process with you. In an earlier project, it was like this time last year after the holidays, we went through Hobby Lobby's 90% off. And if you go into their 90% off aisle, you're going to find all kinds of different frames, but with print on them. So we take paint, for this case it was chalk paint, white chalk paint, and we painted over the signs. So some of these signs were $1, some were 50 cents. Okay, so I have my first set laid out. So now I've added the leather to the flower arrangement. I have to glue this on. I will be gluing it on with Mod Podge, just the matte finish. And then I'll be using the Mod Podge over top of the flowers. So that's our next step. So I have a brush, just a foam brush, to start gluing my stuff down. That's all I'm doing at this time, is gluing items down. So I want to make sure that I get my piece that's going to go inside the vase, because it's a 3D picture. This goes down inside, so I think what I'll do is glue it all except for this top piece. So I'm just putting glue on the back of this. So I'm going to get the sides, but I'm going to leave that top open to put stems in and flowers. You want to make sure it's centered and where you want it, and then press down. Okay, and then this little flower here, very fragile, but the only thing that I want to glue down right now is the base of the stem here, and then I also want to take it up here, and I want to go to the grain of the wood, because it will leave a little bit of a marking. And don't worry, it dries clear. So I don't have any glue on this except for the bottom of the base there. I'm going to stick it underneath. And I'm going to lay my flowers down. The flowers glued on there, and you can see they're not perfectly flat. I wanted more of a 3D effect. Now I'm going to Mod Podge over top of just the flower stems and the white sections. I'm not going over the leather because I do not want the leather to absorb the color and get darker. So I take a smaller brush like this, and I want to coat the stems. So I just put my finger on it and I just cover it. Trying to get the edges, but I don't want to flatten it. But this gives it an extra layer of protection as it dries. And don't worry, it dries clear. And this will help glue it on too. I'll hold this up so you can see. We'll let that dry a little. Okay, so now I have the set drying. And you'll notice this was my first one. And on the other side, I did it the opposite. So I like to have mine so they can be groupings and kind of match each other. If I want to put them in a group or separate them out around the room, they have a cohesive look. Oh, and while it's drying, I put my paintbrushes in a baggie to help it from, you know, not drying out while in between pictures. Okay, so next we have our pretty art here that has dried. And now, I don't know if you can see it in this. It's a certain kind of a light, but I definitely can. And there is a glow where you could see where I went on the outside. You can see the glue. Even though it dries clear, it still puts like a protective coat over it. So now I'm just gonna go over all of this white, making sure I follow the grain, and that way it all has a glossy coat except for my leather piece. And you just want to follow the grain. I put an extra layer of glue on, Mod Podge, and this time I went straight up and down. I got my flowers again. So now these are back over in the drying area. Okay, so for this project, I have my 3 picture frames that I painted from Hobby Lobby, and my paintbrushes, and my Mod Podge. I'm using my Cricut machine, and it's the Cricut Maker 3. Cutting out leather and with M's, and I'm going to spell the word mom with flowers in the middle with my pressed flowers. I'm going to take it off my mat, but one thing I'd like to point out, you can tell I've used my mat over and over. When I first started using this Cricut, I've made the mistake, especially with leather, that I would put my leather directly on here, and then you'll notice that it would peel off the back felt. So what I started doing was putting the clear contact paper on the back, and now it just pulls right off. Doesn't leave a residue. So lesson learned, learn from my mistakes. So I'm peeling off my contact paper now. See all that residue that would have stayed on my mat. And there are still quite a few areas that are not completely cut through, but that's okay. I've got the main design and I can just use my scissors and snip these off, or a straight edge knife, and get the rest out. I probably should have gone one more pass with the Cricut, but it's a guessing game sometimes depending on how thick your leather is. But see how easy that was to cut, because I have my main design. And there is my first M. Now I'll cut the second one out. Mod Podge. And I put it all over the top. Then I'm taking my leather piece, and on the opposite side, the raw side, I'm coating it with Mod Podge. And then I'm just going to let it dry. So I'm going to put the Mod Podge on top. Okay. Then I'm going to take back of this one. Stick it on there. And now I'm going to go over top with this smaller brush, this brush right here, and Mod Podge over top of these. That I coated all of those buds with Mod Podge. And we're going to let it dry. So I'm back over at my Cricut Maker 3. And it looks like it just finished, so I'm starting to cut the word love. And I have an LV and an E because I'm making my O out of the pressed flowers. And you can kind of see the word love, or at least the leather pieces that I want. And I'm peeling off that sticky back. See what I mean? By protecting the mat. I haven't bought a new mat yet. My old mat still works, so it may not be pretty, but it works. So this is the look I'm going for. These are my leather letters and the pressed flowers. All right, so I'm going to take my letters and just set them down on my table to about the position that I want them, so I can remember. Okay, I have a clean brush. I'm going to take my Mod Podge. And honestly, I wish I would have done this with the first pictures that I did with you guys, because the Mod Podge, even though it's flat, definitely leaves a bit of a sheen. Then I'm picking up my L and putting glue on the back, down. So got my Mod Podge on. There's my E. And I need to make sure that I have this spaced good. I'm testing it on my table here. There's my V. I'm liking what I'm seeing, so I'm going to press it down. Okay, I got a generous amount of glue. And I'm going to go over top. So this is what I have so far. It's hard not to get those little specks on there, but this will dry. Isn't that cute? We'll let that dry. So these are my finished projects using scrap leather and pressed flowers. Hope you enjoyed this project.